Well, hello. I hope everyone's well. I'm a little bit, my voice might be noticeable, so I'm just, that voice. It's pollen, and for me, I think it's primarily pollen. Um, Great. Let's remember where we'd gotten up to together in our passage through the Haggadah. If you don't have one, so this would be especially for this year, especially worthwhile. Yeah. So last time we met the Chachamim who were together in Bnei Brak, who were all Mesubim, and saw that actually that way of telling is a very profound description of a different kind of relationship with how Kadosh Baruch Hu guides us through our lives, what it means to be leaving Mitzrayim, how it is that we go about the kind of receptivity for the influx of ideas and insights and the lightning type occurrences that I think all of us meet in our lives when we are awake and open and aware to the things going on for us and are able to meet them in their currentness and their presence. As we saw last time, how we're not sitting in a place where it's lit by the light of the sun. There's a light that's kind of shining and disappearing. And each time it shines, it's shining a different piece of the picture. And sort of getting used to seeing life that way is sometimes uncomfortable it can be, where you're only getting to see a piece of it, and not the whole picture is just kind of an accurate depiction of our condition. We don't really have that overall picture, which we might like to have. But I wouldn't say it's the good news, but it's at least like news to know that in a way, HaKadosh Baruch Hu works with us in that way. And that was what we saw with his taking us around the circuitous route out of Egypt, right? We first saw that, remember last time, where Hashem actually, even to the point of taking us back to Egypt to leave again and to leave under a different set of conditions, where he's not doing it because of the big picture of the promise made to Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov. He's doing it because these people are his beloved, and he seeks to show his goodness to them. And he steps away from what I suppose not suppose, he steps away from what the plan was and makes it something that's appropriate to the people who are involved, right? And that's a very, very significant thing. I know it may seem sort of obvious, but it's a very significant thing in our relationship with Hashem. That in a way he sort of steps into the partiality of our seeing only part of the picture, that we weren't ready for war yet. We weren't ready for that conquest. We needed to go through things. Okay, so he's going that way with us, and kind of stepping back from the big plan. We got to get from A to B, from Egypt to Israel. Well, there's a lot of stuff that has to happen on the way. And once you step into a situation like that and a reality like that, you never really know what the next step is going to have to be, because you don't know how people are going to be developing and growing. And in a way, you're down with them in that small part of the picture where everyone's just doing what it is that they're called upon to do in that moment. And every once in a while, perhaps have a gift of a higher vision, but are primarily living in Bnei Brak, right? Are primarily living in this city of light, right? So that was what we explored last time. Is that going to go off pretty soon, or?
Yeah, it's the washing machine.
I know what it is.
Yeah, like,
Could it wait until after it's
it
nice?
sounds like it's on the spin. It's on the spin, yeah. Are you gonna remove it off?
It's a little weird.
That's about 5 minutes. Let's see.
Oh, it's fine.
It's already
There we go. Now it's off. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam shakol yirbo. All right. So thank you. Yeah, so that's what we saw. And we also saw that the Talmidim came in at the end of that evening, and they said that the time has come for Kriyat Shema of the morning. Kriyat Shema being this broadened vision of the unity and of the oneness. Kriyat Shema really, in the sense of the morning, being like stepping away from that nighttime reality of only getting the lightning flashes, right, and coming to that bigger vision. And so we're done. We're done with the nature of the telling of the story of the nighttime. And then what happens, and I don't think that it's so important for this class. I mean, something which I think is very, very interesting on its own, but perhaps less sort of in the realm of the things that might interest you. But if you see what happens now is actually Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, who's one of the rabbis who participated in this Mesubin, in Bnei Brak, he says that the truth is, during the year we also have to remember Mitzrayim, but it's a different kind of remembering. It's the remembering of history. Like, this is something that happened to us in history. It's not the kind of remembering that we've been doing on the Pesach night, but rather it's remembering the way you would normally think of remembering. As the verse says, Laman tizkor et yom tzitcha meretz Mitzrayim. It's a different verse than what the Rambam quoted, if you remember. The Rambam said, Zechor et hayom hazeh. Remember this day that you left Egypt, right? And that had to do everything with it being right now, as opposed to the other verse, which is quoted here, which is Laman tizkor et yom tzitcha meretz Mitzrayim. Remember the day you left Egypt. Remembering the day you left Egypt, means remembering something that happened in history, right? And so around that, he says, that's appropriate in the daytime for sure, because you're not actually struggling on the quest of searching out something the way you are at the nighttime. But I wonder, he says, if maybe even during the year there isn't something of a taste of what we've been through on this Seder night. And it's very interesting. And I just make this as a comment for those who who at some point want to go deeper into this, but it's very interesting the way he discovers this. And he says that it's because this verse says that you should remember the day you left Egypt, all of the days of your life. Kol yemei chayecha. Yemei chayecha, that's the daytimes. But kol yemei chayecha, that's nighttime. all the days of your life. The all includes the nighttime. And if you look in the way, sometimes you might pray Shacharit and also Ma'ariv. It's something that men are obligated to do, the evening prayer. In the evening prayer, we talk a very different story of leaving Egypt. We talk a story of how I don't have a Siddur here, but if you look at it, you'll see it's a much more of a story. We're talking about people and what. Let me just see if we have a Siddur. It could be nice. There's a table. There's a Siddur on the table. Okay, great. Here, so just so you get a flavor of this, right? We're not going to dwell on it a whole lot, but like in the daytime, we talk about very factually how you took us out of Egypt. It's true, you took us out of Egypt. You redeemed us from there. Their firstborns were killed. Our firstborns were redeemed. You split the sea. The evil people drowned, and your friends were passed through it. Right? Very, very factual. Right, in the daytime, but at the nighttime in the Ma'ariv, so it's quite different. There we say the following. We say that you took a raised our glory. He made great miracles for us. He did vengeance to Pharaoh. He with anger he hit down the firstborn of Egypt, and he took out the children of Israel for an enduring freedom. He passed his children through the sea, and all these people chasing them were drowned there, and they saw this greatness. It's much more of a story at night. Yeah, and I think that part of that is because at nighttime it's like storytelling time, isn't it? Like nighttime is storytelling time. Daytime is the time to get things done, but nighttime is a time to tell stories. Yeah, and so like I think part of the reason that nighttime is a time to tell stories is because you can disconnect from the current reality and sort of float back to the way it was. Used to be like this once upon a time. You don't tell oops, we lost something here. Oh, someone disconnected. Hi, Rivka. Well, you don't tell a once upon a time story um, in the daytime. Usually, can you imagine me now telling once upon a time story now? And we're like, we need to get things done in the daytime. Like there's certain facts that are the current facts. It's like the difference between like sitting and telling a story with your eyes open or sitting and telling a story with your eyes closed. When you sit and tell the story with your eyes closed, so you're much more in touch with the emotions around it. You can kind of travel back in time and be there in it. And so Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah says, like, could it be that we only tell this story as a historical fact in the daytime the rest of the year? What about like kind of traveling back and being in the story? Can we do that too? Is that also part of this mitzvah? Yes, at nighttime, right? Kol yemei chayecha. You need to be able to integrate parts of your history, right, in a way where it's not like on Seder night where we're living it now, right? And it's not just reciting facts, but it's going back and sort of being in that event that once was. That's a different kind of remembering, and it involves a storytelling of night. So, the as it is always in the Talmud and in the Mishnah, you have someone saying one thing and then someone says a different thing, and the different thing that's said is no, it's a different opinion of that Yemei Chayecha is this world and Kol Yemei Chayecha is the world to come, and And the halachic understanding of what happens from here is interesting one, but we're not going to go into it right now. I just want to point out that Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah he's one of the participants in the event that we just talked about. And here's another small piece of information before we start moving into the next depth level here of our passage through towards Cherut, is that this story is actually one which is in contrast to a different story which is told elsewhere. There's a different story told of Rabban Gamliel and his Talmidim. Rabban Gamliel was actually, in a way, the counterpart to Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah was a great darshan. He loved to explicate upon things and open up possibilities. Rabban Gamliel was a great halachist who liked things getting down to the point, practical. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah actually replaced Rabban Gamliel as head of the Sanhedrin when Rabban Gamliel was actually ousted for what was considered to be mistreating one of the Talmidim, who, for various things which we don't need to go into here, but there's always been struggles. It's a people. It's not some perfected stature. The Jewish people were in action, and he was actually ousted, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah replaced him. Now, in the story of Rabban Gamliel, it's the Chachamim are sitting around, the wise people are sitting around discussing the laws of Pesach. But in the world of Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah, here with Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, they're not discussing, they're telling the story. So you see, it's a very different orientation, and the Haggadah is taking us with them into this world of storytelling, right? This ability to connect to things that once were, this ability to tell a story in which I can participate in it as if it's happening right now, right? Which is the nature of this special night. And then what actually he says about himself is, I was like 70 years old when I realized that the centrality of the Egypt history is so important for us to be able to step back and connect ourselves to what once was. And even though he wasn't actually 70, he was only 18. It's actually taught that, yeah. Okay, so we'll put that aside for now. It's an interesting point for people who research these things. Go ahead.
Yeah, just I missed. You said that we're going with Rabbi Azariah in this story.
Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah.
Because
Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah, yeah.
Because he was more.
Well, the Haggadah, right? There's this whole scene here is a storytelling scene, as opposed to a halachic discussion scene.
So that's what we're going with him.
I'm not saying that's why we're going with him. I'm just saying we are going with him. I wasn't explaining why. I'm just saying that, like, the Haggadah could have told the other story about Rabban Gamliel. They also spent all night.
Oh, at the same time?
I don't know, but they were investigating Seder night, but they were investigating the halachot. It's a very different orientation. Okay, that's all. It wasn't very important. It's only important for the following point with which we're going to sort of close this section. This whole section of the Haggadah has really been about, I would say, like the partial view of the whole and the excitement that's in discovering something new by virtue of the fact that you're in a reality that's unfolding, that there are things which no one else has experienced ever before, and that you're coming to them with a very unique set of experiences, orientation, a type of being, personality, so many things that make it that this become your story. And this part of the Haggadah kind of begins its ending here by saying Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu. how blessed is the one who is place, who is the space, who is the expanse within which all this can occur. Right? This is a very particular way of talking about God. Baruch HaMakom, blessed is the one who is placed. I don't know how they translate it there in those Haggadot, but it's a turning to Hashem as the one who provides a place for all those who are really on this quest. And so from here, we actually tell about 4 different types of people. A person who's like an intellectual, who loves to explore intellectually and asks about all of the laws and the rules and the the ways of acting that Hashem has commanded us, right? Our Hashem has commanded you, and you tell him all of the halachot. That's what he wants to know about. He wants to know about what to do. He's asking what to do and understanding how to do. You tell him what to do. Relate to him in terms of what it is that he's seeking. And then you have a son who's like a rasha, a person who's separated and pulled himself out of the whole idea of there being something that really matters in this world. And he says, lachem. What is this, all this work you're doing for yourselves, right? In which he's like kind of accusing you as if you're doing it not for some higher purpose, but because it makes you feel good. It's a nice folklore. You're at home with it. It's the way you grew up. All these other kinds of reasons that people might undertake to do things, right? So he kind of implies in his question, what is this avoda to you, right? It's obviously about you, for you, and really completely self-centered and around yourself. And so we say about him, he's taken himself out of the wholeness of the vision. He's taken himself out of seeing that what we do in this world really makes a difference. It matters. If you remember, we talked about him back when we talked about Manishtana, where we saw how we're asking, like, what difference does all this make? What's different about tonight? And he's the one who says it actually makes no difference. He like undermines the whole idea that there's a root out of which everything is growing, that life is like a plant that is organically expanding, but each participant in that organic life is elemental to the organism itself. And looking at time that way, each moment in time is elemental to the organism itself. If we can sort of break down the sense of the space-time differentiation and relate to what's called a space-time continuum, but as actually parallel to each other in a way in which it's all a beautifully unfolding organism in the way in which we can perhaps get a taste of it from our own organism in our own lives. And that's the truth of the entirety of life. It's really all like that. There's a divine awareness which is present in all, a divine intelligence which is present in all, which is moving everything towards its fruition and culmination. And just like in all organic realities, each part of the organism is elemental to the entirety. You can't just take out a couple of cells, maybe a couple of cells you could get away with because they'll reproduce, but permanently take out a couple of cells from the liver, or just take out the liver or something, and the rest of the organism will do fine. It'll just be the organism without a liver. It doesn't work that way. With a computer, you could take out a couple of bits and it'll, basically it can continue to function, or you could design a way for it to avoid the pitfalls of not having certain pieces in the bits, right? But with cells and with an organism, everything is growing. Now, God is called the Ikar here, which means the root. Okay, the Ikar means the root. The Ikar of a tree is its root, right? And And if you pull yourself out of life in a way in which you cease to see that these different moments make a difference, that I make a difference in being here, well, then basically what you're doing is saying that nothing really makes a difference because there is no whole in which I'm participating. I'm just like kind of my own, doing my own thing. And a lot of people walk around with this feeling, today. I think it's a very, initially sort of a liberating feeling. Throwing it all off. I don't care about nothing. They've been giving me too much trouble. I'm on my way. None makes a difference. I can do whatever I want. Everything's free, right? It's like running away from home, and I can just like scream at the top of my lungs. I don't care what you people think. I'm cool with it. It's like it's a whole life ahead of me until you start to kind of like, I don't know exactly how it works. I think it really is a soul awakening of like, really, that's all it's about. Just be like screaming at the top of my lungs and do whatever the hell I want. I mean, really, that's what it's all about. Like, I mean, I'm just a little speck in this tremendous, perhaps infinite cosmos, and I'm going to be doused out in no time. Speak of the space-time continuum, man. I like practically don't exist. I mean, what am I talking about? And why do I have this sense that, and there's got to be more to this than that. Why do I have that sense? Why don't I just say, as some people do, but it usually takes quite a bit of intellectual antics to get there. Like, no, yeah, that's just the deal. It's a cold, unfeeling cosmos in which what you do makes no difference. If you have the strength and the courage, you'll live it out, or you'll commit suicide, as some of those leaders in that movement did. I mean, it's like Camus, like these are statements about the nature of life, which somehow don't work, which is worth looking at. In other words, people generally in that kind of a milieu don't get more happy, liberated, and excited with things. Actually, it seems to have a what they call a denouement, a kind of a sort of unraveling, and lives don't work. Now, that's not the empirical proof. Life works, it doesn't work. People happy, not happy, but it probably does say something about what's true and not true. But what is the case is that there's a universal human aspiration to recognize the big picture in which I'm playing a part, and I'm playing a part that matters, right? So the Russia really misses out on this. He's very cynical. He's taking himself away from the ikar. This is literally what the Haggadah says. Since he took himself out of the universal and having a part in the bigger, organic, interconnected reality, so he's actually denying that there's one root out of which everything is organically grown. Okay. And I think the image of an organism is extremely helpful, and it's the standard image in the Kabbalah for sure, right? But I really think in all of our literature, that creation is like a organism, like a tree that is growing out of the divine root. And just like the cells that are in the root are not really that different than the cells that are in the trunk or in the branches or in the stems or in the leaves or even in the fruit. It's incredibly the same cells, each of them holding a picture of the entirety, but just in their place, reflecting a particular expression that's appropriate to the location that they're in. So if it's not like you're a fruit cell. You're a cell. You're a stem cell. That's even what they call it, right? It's like, but it's not really a stem. It's a root cell, right? That you're simply reflecting and manifesting elements from within it that are appropriate to this place. In embryology, it's like one of the most daunting issues. It's like you have this embryo growing inside embryo, like right, embryo growing, and like they do not understand why it is that it's like basically the same cell material that keeps, reproducing and growing. But when it gets to the area of liver, it becomes liver cells. When those cells get to the area of nails, they become nail cells. When they get in here, they become olfactory cells. I mean, it's a very weird thing. There doesn't seem to be anyone who's controlling this perfect placement of these different cells. And as they've uncovered and recognized more, it's actually more like what I just described. But that means that the cell itself has some sense of the entirety and also its place within that entirety, and it's reproducing and differentiating according to a whole holistic vision of what's the appropriate place and opening and differentiated identity, which is required for there, right? Or it's appropriate to there. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like, it's a very strange thing that this didn't grow into a thumbnail.
Yeah.
Now, of course it didn't grow into a thumbnail. Why would it grow into a thumbnail? Well, why would it grow into a nose? I mean, who's got that holistic picture that's guiding that embryo forward, right? There's a holistic picture in which each participant member has in some level the holism of the entirety, and through that, some embedded recognition of my particular place in that. And whether I live that out or don't live that out will make all the difference, not just to me, but to the entirety. And that's a big change in your outlook. That's an outlook which leads towards cherut, as opposed to just liberation, as we described before. The Russia is looking for like a liberation. And weirdly, we say to him, and it's not so weird, it's actually a very deep insight. We say to him, if what you're looking for is liberation, and the way you're looking at life is everyone's just doing their own thing for their own sake, okay? Leave me alone with the big picture, leave me alone with that big embryo stuff. It's a bunch of malarkey. It's just like the kinds of things you like to think because it makes you feel good. But if you would be like me, honest and real, you would just live out the powers of your life wherever they take you, right? And we say to him, and this is so deep and painfully actual, we say to him that, listen, babe, if you were in Egypt, you wouldn't have left. And it's not because God wouldn't have taken him out. He would not have left. He would have been one of the people who want to stay. What? The big liberated guy? Sure. Get me someone who takes care of my house, takes care of my cleaning, takes care of my this, and I just got to go to work and take care of things. And then I got all the time in the world because everything's taken care of for me. Oh, so they beat me up and they tell me to do all kinds of things. Heck, I'm free though. Like my evenings are to me or whatever, or it gets even worse, where ultimately people who live that kind of absolute liberation and have nothing, so to speak, to answer to, in the end, they seek out some kind of an absolute truth. And they'll become fascist. They'll become dedicated to shutting the mouths of people who think differently than them because it makes them uncomfortable, right? Or they feel it's an aggression to talk to me about this way. All those weird things start happening when you lose a sense of being participant in a greater organism and you become only out there for yourself. See that how it's profound and painful irony that we're actually going through right now in this period of history. And the Russia who denies the sense of this organismic reality, which is a divine life playing itself out through us, and instead takes you out of that. Literally, hotzi et atzmo min haklal, takes him out of this entirety, is someone who loses a connection to the root, loses really any kind of sense of value, that his life makes a difference, either goes depressed, dedicates himself to some cause because it seems like it's really true, becomes whatever, all kinds of things which I could go on describing. You don't really need me to describe them, you just have to look on the internet. But like where people go with this, and it's like, and it's a very real personhood, and he's here at the Seder with us also. The truth is, he's inside all of us. All of these four characters are actually have an intellectual interest. We wonder sometimes, is this true? Is it real? And perhaps sometimes prefer that kind of liberation from context. And then we're going to go through the other two also who are there. But I hope you're getting the picture also that the Haggadah is really spending time here talking about God as the place who holds all of these. And yes, and here's the news which needs to be worked out and probably won't be worked out till the end of days. There's a place for that Rasha also. And for that attitude of like, no, just let me go, man. Let me do it for me. You're doing it for you. Let me do it for me. There is a place for that also, and that deserves its own exploration, right? Okay, so this is a little bit about the Rasha. We can go talk about him quite a bit. I want to point out something else about the Rasha. You see, all of these are built on verses in the Torah, and you can look them up in chapter 12 and 13 of Shmot, and also in Dvarim in chapter 16, and you should look at them. The Chacham is in chapter 16 of Dvarim. The Rasha, he's in chapter 12 of Shmot. And the Tam, who we're about to look upon, is in chapter 13, verse 14 of Shmot. Okay, so these are like actual verses in the Torah. If you look at them carefully, you'll see that they all ask a question, except the one who doesn't know how to ask, and the Rasha, who doesn't ask, but rather who says. He doesn't ask questions. He's not exploring. He's making statements, right? There's only one narrative here in the Rasha's world. Like, there's no sense of exploration with him. And I think that's how it was very clear to the rabbis that that's the Rasha in this tale. Okay, so yeah, we're moving on now. Then we have the Tam. He's like a simple person, and he just says, "What is this? What's going on?" So you tell the story of, with a strong hand, Hashem took us out of Egypt from the house of slaves. Now, here's something very interesting. Okay. This Tam, Maimonides talks about in his laws of the Seder night. But listen to what he says. He says a very interesting thing, which will help us also as we move along. He says, if you have a son who really understands things well, a child who understands things well, so tell him or her, tell them the whole story, what happened, all the miracles and all of the things that Hashem did. But if you have a simpleton child, so you should take that child's hand and go over to the slave, if you have a slave, and say, we all used to be that way, and then Hashem redeemed us from there. I believe that's the Tam. Like, we used to be in the slave's house. Now, just think about this for a second. You would think that the simple child, if you want to turn on the air conditioning, you can. You're okay? You're all okay? You're not melting?
Are you okay?
The sun on me is actually, but I'm kind of hoping it's drying out my respiratory issues.
Do you want the sun or
Maybe I should close the. It is kind of hot.
Is it good for you? Is it good?
I have no idea. That's all about you.
Well,
As for me,
Right,
I'm fine.
cut them off.
I don't know. Is it like a loud one? Let's try it out. You're cool. It's great. Amazing. Where's your hot?
Yeah, we're very hot.
Yeah, so turn it on. Turn it on. Let's test it out. See if it's too loud. Remember, I made a plan last time. I forgot to remind you. Here we go. It's on air conditioning mode. It's not still on heat from the winter. I already feel better. Ah, look how many smiles in there. Okay. It's worth it already. So there we go. So here's the thing I think that's going on with the Tom. See, you would think that if it's a simpleton, then you would tell him all the story about miracles and stuff. And the wise kid, I don't know, you would tell him something profound ideas or something, not just about the miracles. But I think based on what we are reading here, the Rambam, Maimonides learns, I don't know, if you would tell a simple kid all of the miracle stories, you know what he'd come away with? He'd come away with that superhero feeling that like God was strong, Pharaoh was weak, we outpowered them, and we are the greatest because God is stronger than they are, right? He did all these miracles for us, which would completely miss the point. The point isn't the miracles. The miracles, as we will, Bezrat Hashem, discover later on, the Haggadah starts talking about the miracles. It hasn't started talking about them yet. We're almost done today. But the point of the point of the miracles we'll leave aside for right now. But you could easily get confused and forget that actually what we're celebrating tonight is not that God is stronger than the Egyptians. That's not the deal. It's that to be enslaved is to really not have your own life. And even the simplest child recognizes that. The slave might have a very nice, halacha, in terms of the halacha, you actually have to give the slave similar living conditions that you have. According to Jewish law, you have a couch, he's got to have a couch. You have a Sealy Posturepedic mattress, you got to get him one too. You have a color TV or just black and white? Well, make sure that he's got the same thing. That's like, wow. That's actually the way it is. And so he goes into the slave's little apartment and I don't know, looks okay. And his dad says, we were once like that. And I believe that what the Tom specifically, he's not a simpleton. He's like naive. He's simple in his approach to things, gets it right away. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. He lives someone else's life. He's just an extension of you, Dad. He's someone who doesn't really have what he can choose to do, but he's always doing what you choose for him to do. I don't want that. And in a way, the Tom has this like visceral sense that because he's simple, because he's in touch with all the things we were just talking about, that basal sense that like I'm part of something big and I want my life to matter and I'm here to make a difference and life is important and all those things which he would never be able to enunciate to you necessarily, but he does get in his guts. So for him, it's enough just to tell him, we were once like that, and Hashem redeemed us from that. That's enough for him. Don't start telling him miracle stories, because then he'll get confused and think that it's a story of the strong against the weaker, That's not what the story is about at all. Or that it's a story of people suffering who are relieved from their suffering. It's not a story about that either. It's a story about the primacy of true cherut and how that defines the nature of who we are.
That's true.
Now, I know that you're not going to understand that, you can say to the Tom. And so it's enough just to show him and get him to have that really like in life experience of what it means to have a life and what it means to not have a life. That's the Tom. He's also here at the table. And so you say to him, Hashem with a strong hand took us out of Egypt, but the emphasis on from the house of slavery. It's a house of slavery. It's a way of being, right? It's not just of being slaves. It's the house of slavery. It's the context of slavery. It's the way of being of slavery in which you don't value what it is that you're here to bring, and you're willing to hand it over to someone else. Okay. And then finally, we have the one who doesn't even know well enough what to ask. He doesn't have a question. So then simply with him or her, just start saying, for the sake of this evening that we're having now, this avoda, this service that we're doing now, these mitzvot that we're doing now, this life that we have now, it was for this that Hashem did this for me. And you say it in the first person to him, because this is a child who hasn't yet awakened to ask about themselves. So to say to them, he did it for you, doesn't work for someone who hasn't really started on a quest. The only thing you can do for someone who hasn't really started on a quest for their life is to exemplify your life and become an inspiration to them. That's really true. You know, I educate all kinds of people. There are all kinds of people at the table right now, and all kinds of people in the room when I'm doing my thing, and et cetera, et cetera. There's some people that are like on the quest, they're on the search. They don't need you, the fact that you're on a search, to inspire them to be on their search. They're on their search. They're listening for the information that's going to move them forward, right? They don't need to hear about your story. They need to hear the way of being that is a path for them to grow into. But then there's always people at the table who they're not really on a search. They're kind of like, they're, trying to be good, or trying to, get through this, or trying to, pansy up to you, or they're trying to get a good grade, or, not get in trouble, or they're trying to live a righteous life, but they're not really sort of in touch with themselves. There's all kinds of people at the table always, right? And as I said before, there's all kinds of people that we carry them all in us, right? And so it's been my experience and corroborated by the Haggadah that the person who hasn't really started to value their life as like, I have a quest, I'm on a search, I really want to fulfill my personal mission here. It's not about fitting into someone else's frame, like, wow. So if they're not there, then all you can do is say, you should know that Hashem took me out of Egypt for this night. And hope that awakens something in them. It's like, and it does. And it does. And I can tell you it does. It does. When people witness others on this quest, in the same way that there's a visceral sense for the Tom, for the simple one, that I don't want to be a slave. Or in the same way that there's a visceral sense in most human beings that there's meaning, it goes a lot beyond just what I feel like doing right now. In the same way, there's a visceral sense in the heart of this Eno Yodea Lishol. I haven't started asking questions yet, but you can give him like a kind of an inspiration that like there's such a thing as having a personal quest. Yeah. Let me tell you my story about my Egypt and where my life was going when I became conscious and when I understood that I need to make some choices and perhaps even go against the flow of things and you know commit and become faithful and reliable and think out of the box because it was the only way I was going to get anywhere and et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, you start telling someone who doesn't know how to ask questions that story, that's the way to touch them. The way to touch the Tom is by showing them a slave. The way to touch an Ein daily show is by showing them that you had a lot of questions in your life, and that was how you found out what it is that is is your life. Yeah. So we have these four these four people with us that the makom, that the place is holding. And just like we had the six rabbis exploring the story in the lightning as they sat curved over, imitating the way Hashem has to kind of like take us around on the circuitous route. So also there's like these four basic elements that of life and of identity that are our intellectual seeking, our sort of heartfelt, visceral experience, the tam, the Ein daily sh'ol, the almost simple biological presence with a personhood there, and the Russia, the rebellious one who's looking to strike out his or her own path, regardless of anything, right? Those are the four basic personhood elements of our mind and our intellect, chacham, and the kind of heartfelt integrity and presence of the Tom. I just know it from the inside, kind of. Just show me the slave. I know what exactly the whole story is. I get it. And the one who really hasn't really started yet, it's just kind of living instinct and basic reality. And the aspect of us which is usually, gets categorized as the Yetzer Hara, that like, the evil inclination that wants to like just rebel and get off on its own, but which in its more primal level is actually a holy desire for my specific life not just being bent to some other will. But the Russia here just has it wrong because we're part of something bigger than ourselves, and he wants to throw that off too, right? But when he gets it right, the Russia, he's the guy you want to spend a lot of time with, in my opinion. I like Rishaim personally. Rishaim who have been corrected, so to speak, who are rebellious types, who like they've got their independent creative way, right? They're not playing someone else's tune, but they have had the moment or the enlightenment to recognize I can do that, as I've put it in the past, within the chord. I can play the inspired improvisation. I can do it within the chord. I can do it together with you. It can be something that organically grows, and I will have my special place in that. I'm not being asked to give that up. I'm actually being told how to make that even more meaningful and with greater weight, right? Then that Russia becomes really an entirely different human being and becomes the letters of Russia actually permutate into Sha'ar. It becomes the gateway. This becomes the gateway personality. The gateway personality is someone who's on his way, on her way through the gate. I'm going through the gate. I'm going onwards, but I know there's a gate. I know there's a frame. So there's a movement in that. And the other thing which these letters permutate into is becomes a eser, which is a 10. a 10. What, 10? So I'll just tell you an amazing thing that the Maharal says. The 10 is the number which incorporates separate digits into one unity. 9, each digit is separate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10, you're finished with one unity. And then in Hebrew, it's even stronger. Achad Esrei, Shteim Esrei, Shlosh Esrei, 110, 210, 310, or in English, 11, 12. It's really 210, 310, 13, 14, 15, 16, right? The 10 stays the same and you just keep adding. Then you get to 20, 2 tens, right? 10 is a unification of individual parts that are individual and separate, but participate in a greater whole. That, by the way, is the meaning of the 10 commandments, or the 10 speakings of God in creating the world. It's one organic, interconnected unity that is not parts making a whole, but in which each part is actually aware of the whole and participating in the unfolding of that whole in a way we all get that on some level. So the Russia is like he's standing for his individual way of seeing it, but he's lost the eser. He's lost the 10. The word has permutated into Russia, right? And where he needs to get to is to be the person of the sha'ar, the person of the gateway, which is like, I know there's a gateway, I know there's a frame. I'm walking through it, open the doors and let me in. I'm walking in, right? I'm walking onwards, right? So, you know, I'm not going to say that he's my hero, but there's definitely a lot there that you don't want to leave aside. And so we don't kick him out. We don't say, you chutzpah, you are brazen, like, get out of here. No, what we do is something which is a kind of a mysterious term with him. We say, hakhe et shinav. We say, make his teeth less sharp, dull his teeth. And the way we dull his teeth is we say to him that you would have stayed there enslaved. I know it's going to sound weird to you, but the way you're going, you're actually going to end up some kind of like fascist nut who like just signs on to some ideology and enslaves himself to some bigger cult or something because it's not real. It's not real to life what you're talking about. And so you need to like perhaps dull some of your cutting edges here and rejoin a sense of participating in something bigger than you, or right, letting him know that he's lost the sense of things making a difference. Shein, shinayim, also means to make a difference. Manishtana, it's the same word, right? Yeah, like recognize that you've lost the sense of making a difference in all of this standing on the barricades and insisting on your way. Okay, that was that.
That was amazing.
Now we are ready to begin the class.
Okay. Another hour.
Thank you so much.
Wait, you're welcome to go. Now is the addendum. How much time do you have? Can we take another 15 minutes?
Yes.
And I want anyone who feels like, hey, that was good, I've had enough, to feel absolutely free to look out. It's totally fine. Okay. You could turn that back on. I mean, I saw all the smiles disappear immediately. I mean, I thought at first it was because they thought the class was over, but I think it had to do with the air conditioning. Anyhow, yes. So let's go a little bit farther ahead. We're going to meet again next week. You guys meeting next week? Yeah. Oh, cool. Oh, good. Oh, amazing. Okay, so I won't take a whole lot more time. I'll just take a little time. One of the most amazing and strange statements of the Haggadah is the next line. Don't miss it. The Haggadah says, Yachol mi Rosh Chodesh. Maybe we should be doing this from the beginning of the month. That's next week, actually, next time we meet, we'll be on Rosh Chodesh. Maybe we should be doing this starting the beginning of Nisan, starting the beginning of the month. Now, what? I mean, here we are, mom's cooked a big meal. All the guests are here. And we've started the activity of the Haggadah, right? Now you're asking me if it's the right night? A little bit strange. I mean, this doesn't seem to be the right time to ask that question. But if you've been following everything we've been exploring, you will understand right away why this is the right question. You see, the beginning of the month is the beginning of Nisan. Nisan is the first month of the year, right? Nisan is the real New Year. I know we celebrate Rosh Hashanah, New Year's, later on in the year on Tishrei, but the real beginning of the year, that's Nisan, right? Yeah, and that Nisan is just the new beginning. It's actually called HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim. This month is the beginning of all months. But in Hebrew, Chodesh means new. Chadash is new, right? Shana is something which is repeating itself, right? There's changes within it, but it's repeating itself. Chodesh is new because the moon, the lunar reality is one which is always disappearing and coming back out of nowhere. I mean, it's a beautiful contemplative process, which I highly recommend, to start with Rosh Chodesh every night, looking for the moon and then contemplating it as it grows each night. It is a very powerful experience of renewal. It's out of the darkness. The day before the new moon, there's no moon. That's pretty weird, really, that the world is set up this way. The sun, same sun in the morning as it was at night. It's pretty clear it's just hiding behind something and it keeps burning. But the moon does not keep burning. The moon actually disappears, or at least it's being seen by us, disappears. It is the universal image of renewal, right? It is the universal image of birthing out of nothing. It's an image of creation, of innovation, of revelation, of something which was not known before. It is the expression of how there is nothing and then there is something. It is all these things. Now, are not all of these things profoundly elemental to the experience of I now leave Egypt? I am new. Everything's new for me. Starting again. That aspect of liberation, which means I can just step forward into a new life. And there's an aspect of that we're also talking about, right? I know we keep re-emphasizing chirut and the embeddedness in the whole, but this part of the Haggadah's prime investment is in us liberating, opening up to our story, opening up to the newness of this year, opening up to the newness of the possibilities, right? Opening up to the fact that I've got a life and it's waiting to unfold. These are very beautiful realizations. Aren't they most appropriate when the moon first reappears and not when the moon is full? The moon is full is more a story of things having come to their culmination than it is a story of something renewed. And so at this point in the Haggadah, wow, and this is one of my proofs that the approach I'm taking is a true approach in this kind of conceptualization of the first part of the Haggadah, turning into a concept as opposed to just understanding little pieces of it, right? Like that this is really what the tale is, that you're freed to discover. You're free to explore. You're invited for it to be right now, as if no one has ever been in Egypt before. You're the first one there, and you're the first one to leave, right? That I am leaving Egypt now. That means no one did it before you, in a sense, right? It's happening now. Okay, all of that. Isn't that the best time? The beginning of the month, when the moon first reappears. And so the Haggadah asks this outrageous question. Maybe we should be doing this starting the beginning of the month, right? That's literally what we ask here. Talmud Lomar, well, there's another aspect of things, which is Bayom Hahu, in that day meaning the day you actually historically left, which was the 15th of Nisan, not the 1st of Nisan. I Bayom Hahu, okay, so it's on the 15th. Yachol mi ba'od yom, maybe it should be after the day has risen, as the day came in, right? After the sun shines. Because actually the Jewish people left Egypt at dawn. Okay? So maybe we should then celebrate it at dawn. Talmud Lomar bavur zeh. No, but we say that we left for this. And we have to have something to point at. This is a very deep moment. Bavur zeh. What does that mean, bavur zeh? We have something physical to point at. What is the physical thing we now point at? Bavur zeh. Lo amarti, I'm just reading now. I didn't say to do it until it's the moment when there's matzah and there's maror sitting in front of you. That's it. End of the first Haggadah. There's a second Haggadah, we'll start next time. The end of the first Haggadah. This is a very profound moment, and I want to just be with you in this for a precious moment, okay? Because let me see if I'll manage to say it. It's like our selfhood, our inner being, which is such a undefined, ever growing, in a sense, amorphous, like not with real tangibility, right? You can't touch yourself. You can touch your body. You can't really touch yourself. Because, like when a person dies, I was just reading a story, someone writing, they took his mom into the hospital, they weighed her, she was, 109 pounds. And, and then she died, they weighed her again, she was still 109 pounds, but wasn't alive anymore. It's like our being, ourself, which is I wouldn't even say enclosed is the right word, which manifests through this body during this short term in this earthly, hopefully paradise, right? Of work and of service and of exploration and of discovery and of sensation and of doing, like on the one hand, it's forever new, ourself, forever renewing, always discovering fresh, right, as it unfolds, expands and evolves, okay? And on the other hand, it's here living in this world with physical objects that are universally communicable, even though my inner life I cannot communicate to you as hard as I try, but you're living your own inner life and you'll get a piece of it, but really it immediately becomes translated into your inner life and your experience. It's not really shareable because it's absolutely completely unique and self-contained, very private and really in the deep sense of tsanua, right, of modest, right, and reserved. And yet I do have universal ways of communicating with you. I can use this as a symbol, and you understand I'm talking about a kos, a receptacle that's waiting to be filled. Or I can use words that we've learned to share, and you can understand. I could sing a song which might be more close to my inner reality and life and share that. But nevertheless, those are sort of universalizable symbols for something which is in essence unknowable, inaccessible, and partially because it's forever renewing and realizing itself, right? You don't know yourself. You're only finding out now something new of yourself. So you don't, there's no object there for you to know or touch, right? But this is, on some level, at least in terms of the way we've been designed to experience energy, this is experienceable as solid. I can hand it to you. You'll take it. You'll feel the same thing I felt. You'll be able to drink from it like I drank from it. Objects are an incredible modality for us to be able to communicate in the deep sense of commune and communicate. Is that not so? Like, that's where we're able to interact, really. There are other types of spiritual interaction, but this is where we're able to really communicate and, in a sense, commune with each other. We're sharing some words, we're sharing a song, we're sharing a love, we're sharing a service. Okay? That's not the moon when it first reappears. That's the moon when it's fully manifest. When it's manifested as a symbol that can be seen. The moon never went away, you know. It's all about how we're seeing it. It's fully seen. When the moon is fully seen, it's the same thing as when you have matzah on the table. You have an object that you can share with others, and you can share with Hashem, you can share with God in your service of Him. That is amazing. What? You mean God, you, the infinite one, have made something finite through which we can commune, we can connect? That's like, you mean like you, God, really care about this matzah that like matters to you? That is an embodiment of something to you? And when my body eats it, that's an event which is connecting me to God? But God, you are the most abstract, infinite, boundless. Well, young man, says God, so is yourself on certain levels, infinite, boundless, and indefinable. I mean, do you think you know you? Do you think anyone does? And you're talking, why can't I talk? And you are manifesting in body, so can I manifest my will through embodied things that you can serve me through. You get this? This is a very profound moment for the Baal Haggadah to speak out this truth, that as much as we have been enjoying the openness of the liberation and the boundlessness of the exploration, right? That's not the night we tell the tale when the moon is celebrating its minuscule renewal. We tell the tale when we can turn things into something that we can serve with, something we can live through, something we can communicate through. And that's tonight. When there's matzah, there's maror on the table, there are mitzvot to do, there's a way that Hashem gave us to communicate back to Him through His mitzvot. And yeah, just like it's a great celebration to touch someone you love. You know, when I touch my wife, so what does that mean? I'm touching my wife. Not really touching my wife. I think I touch my wife more when I say sweet things than when I touch her hand. But you talk about it as if when you touch the body, that's the touching, and that's true. And something that we're all very grateful for a hug, for a word, which is also a physical manifestation and symbol, which is a universal representation of something which is really ultimately impossible to fully represent, right? That's why it's called a represent, to represent it. We're trying to present something that's there before, but it's never fully really so. But nevertheless, as we live these embodied lives, we're very grateful for the opportunity that Hashem gave us to live them through these bodies, to serve through these bodies, to feel, to touch, to emote, to all these things which happen here. Even though our self is there, expressed through it, and touching it, but is also far beyond it, and not only all of that. So you might have thought after all of this talk of fully open renewal and liberation, that the best time to do it would be when the moon is barely there. You could have thought that, but here's the good news, sort of the news, right? No. We want to do this when we can talk, act, live it out in this world. We're not getting lost. And so I know you have this question, maybe we should have been doing this since the beginning of the month, but the answer is the time to do it is now, when we're in the body, here, able to serve, able to sing, able to eat. L'chaim. Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.